My high school band teacher's voice was a weapon. Mr. Ward could make 150 kids go silent with 2 words. I'll wait. The orchestra room would be a madhouse, and Mr. Ward, our band director, would walk up to the podium. He'd pick up his conductor's wand and survey the room. If we didn't shut up and sit at attention, he'd put down his conductor's wand and just say, in a very quiet voice, "I'll wait." But Mr. Ward never had to wait. You didn't want Mr. Ward to wait on you. When he spoke, we listened. Do you have that kind of power in your business voice? Can you utter 2 words and turn a full conference room silent on a dime, everyone waiting with bated breath on what you'll say next? Maybe your business voice doesn't need to be as potent as Mr. Ward's, my high school band teacher. But you need a compelling business voice to get what you want in business and to go where you want to go. Your business voice is a superpower if you work on it. How do you expect to get what you want if you don't know how to ask for it? What's that ancient wisdom? Ask, and ye shall receive. Or what if you want people to follow you? Isn't that what a leader is? Someone others follow. And people follow people who have a compelling business voice. In fact, there are 3 elements to a compelling business voice. Number 1, be distinct. Number 2, be clear. And number 3, be persuasive. So what's your analysis of your business voice? Are you distinct? Are you memorable? Do you stand out from the crowd? Are you clear? Or do you ramble or never quite get to the point? And finally, are you persuasive? If your business voice could use a tune-up, then join me in learning how to create a more compelling business voice, online and in real life, in this episode of The Business of Being. This is The Business of Being, a podcast about the intersection of life and business, how the inner work of being prepares us for the outer work of doing and succeeding. I'm your host, Stephen Megling. My guest today is Amanda Catarzi, a tattooed badass chief marketing officer and owner of Inkery Co, a content and creative agency. Amanda and I discuss the process of creating content for our companies and personal brands, how to keep your audience front of mind when you communicate, why there are no quantum leaps in business communication success, along with archery, and the gun Amanda keeps on her desk. Stick around after our discussion. I'll share the single truth you can use to hone your business voice in real life, aka Dolly's Rule, as in the Dolly Parton. So Amanda, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you being here and having this discussion because I wanted to talk about finding your business voice. As I find as I check in with business leaders and entrepreneurs, we have our outside voices, we have our mom voices, our dad voices, our relationship voices, and then we have our business voices. And quite often, some of the most incredible, dynamic, capable people that I've ever had the privilege of meeting and knowing still struggle with their voice in business. So I guess the first question I want to ask you, and it's a leading question, right? I'm going to demonstrate my belief here as I ask you the question. So feel free to reject my notion. But
Okay.
So the first question for you is, why is it so damn hard to find and cultivate our business voice?
Well, I think as you listed out all of those different voices, the mom voice, the wife voice, the husband voice, the dad voice, those voices are all based off of expectations and relating to what other people need from us. And so when people come into developing their business voices, those needs aren't so clear, and they have to go find the needs of their ideal client. And if they don't have that very clear, it's very hard to develop a business voice. So there's a lot more involved and there's a lot more hidden initially, whereas a dad role is very clear. This is what the child needs to develop. This is what you need to say to be nurturing, yada, yada, yada. coming into a business and helping a client, it's a little bit more convoluted, a little bit more complicated. And especially if you're a startup, you don't know who your ideal client is potentially. And that's kind of a fumbling, learning, messy process. And I don't think people actually go through the messy process. They just assume and then they stand by that assumption very hardcore, very rigidly.
I really appreciate your insight there because you said, well, your dad voice is pretty obvious because the kids need, you know what your kids need to hear. Now, I do not have children, but I have a dog, best dog on earth, Ollie Adams. And I'm just thinking in my head now, like, yeah, Ollie needs to know when I don't like him doing something. And that voice that comes out of me is very clear for my little dude, Ollie. So I appreciate that. And then tying into why it might be so damn hard to find and refine your business voice comes down to the messiness of who you're trying to serve, who you want to help. What do they need from you? How do they need to hear it from you?
Yeah. And because there's ego involved in business, you don't want to look messy in business because, God forbid, that might undermine your authority somehow. But really, the opposite is true. As people watch you go through the mess and process the mess and be vulnerable with that, it's way more relatable. So, that's actually a very important time in your business as you're developing that voice to let people see that development and join you in that journey because you'll create absolutely loyal followers and customers in that process as well.
Oh, wow, that's well said. And I just want to kind of check in with our listeners because I know so many of the people hearing this are coming from different perspectives of their business journey. Some are the owner operator of that business. Some are great leaders or rising leaders in that business. So we're talking to a lot of different people here. But I think one of the things that kind of occurs to me as you're sharing this back is you're talking so beautifully about being authentic and loving the mess and respecting the mess because the mess is what makes me personally lean into somebody. It's like, oh, you're not perfect. Cool, you know? And to kind of tie into this thread here, do you find because you represent and work for and help cultivate the voice of businesses that you work with, is there a pattern between the business owner, leader, operator, or the leadership team, brand wise, voice wise, and the company itself? Do you ever look at those two and see how they need to be married up together?
Oh, definitely. Because a lot of them are so separated out. I think the old way of doing business is it's a very stoic, not fun, boring. Here's our logo. Here's our brand colors, cut and dry. Nowadays, people, well, it's always been true. People always want to do business with people. But how do you implement that in a way that doesn't undermine your authority, that communicates responsibility, that communicates we know what we're doing, but still communicates, yeah, we're humans too, and things get messy too. So, like I said earlier, I think there's a lot of ego involved. And so there's resistance to marrying those two because of fear of undermining yourself or fear of being too honest. Where I probably dance, I err on the side for sure of being ruthlessly honest. I've been told that I'm not afraid to hurt people's feelings if the truth is there. I don't understand that. I do understand the more honest I get, the more money I make.
Mm. The more honest you are, the more money you make. That's a soundbite.
When you lean into that mess, like that's where the magic is in the mess, and it shouldn't be avoided. It should be heartily embraced because there's so much discovery, so much more gold waiting there for you to develop in that journey. And again, an opportunity to invite your following, your customers. I mean, brands that involve customers in their rebrand, they'll have contests, right? They'll do all different kinds of stuff. It's such an incredible marketing opportunity. I just don't there's no reason to not make that public and involve people in the quote unquote mess.
Absolutely. And so, again, to appreciate our listeners, there's so many different ways that we could kind of tease out what you've just been sharing to apply it to them. On one level, I'm thinking in a very practical way, Amanda, about LinkedIn and our personal feed. And I have a dear friend who's going to be on the podcast as well, who is a recruiter. And what she does is she leads teams to recruit great talent. Her LinkedIn feed, what she posts almost every week, is about her personal journey, her deepening of her own inner wisdom and quiet and peace. And I always tease her for being woo woo, but that's who she is. And I shared with her early on in her journey. I was like, if you talk more about these things that matter to you, you will attract the kind of people that you enjoy working with.
Oh, 1,000%. That's literally how I write my LinkedIn posts is I look at my previous week, I see what meetings happened that week, I write down a story from every single day, and then I write down what the lesson is. If there's a marketing lesson, if there's a business development lesson, how do I bring it back around to my niche? Those do very well on LinkedIn and get me a lot of DMs because it's real, it's relatable, and it's relevant. You cannot go wrong with any of that.
So, going back to my first question, why is it so damn hard? I think we've covered that. I think it is very hard for a lot of people. And you've mentioned ego 3, 4, 5 times now. Since I am a person without ego, I have completely mastered my ability to have no
Ooh.
ego. I don't know what that means but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, assume some other people might struggle with that. But I think if we can maybe play with that thread as well, because we throw the word ego out a lot. I'm not sure we all know what that means per se. I think we have different definitions. Talk to me about ego in this context and how it might help and also hinder our ability to have that authentic business voice.
So for me, ego means, and I'm definitely not an expert in the metaphysical or the woo world. So all of those kind of people are probably cringing so hard right now. For me, ego is pride.
Mm,
When it's used out of context, it's pride. So ego out of context is pride. Ego within the right context is confidence. And so if you are resisting being vulnerable, if you're resisting something that would help your business because of your ego, because of your pride, then it's detrimental. If you are using something because you're confident in this thread or in this area or in this topic, then it serves you. So in that case, ego is good. Like you hear the phrase fake it till you make it all the time. And I think to a degree, yes, but again, in the right context. I just had an interesting conversation with someone who's way more well versed in the nuances of business than I might ever be. And I was like, listen, I'm confident in what I can do, but a lot of what you're talking about, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I just want to be straight up with you that there's no ego here. However, the things I do very well. And he appreciated that vulnerability and that confidence at the same time.
yes, absolutely. And I love how you balanced the light side and the dark side of ego, because it is a duality. We do need ego.
Yeah.
That's why I still retain a little bit of mine, even though I'm
So humble.
self-actualized. In case you didn't know that, Amanda, I'll be levitating out of my office after this. But all kidding aside, listeners, just before we got started recording, Amanda and I were talking, and Amanda is a brilliant writer, strategist, chief marketing officer. And I was sharing with Amanda that has been my career as well, starting as a writer and then doing other things within the business growth space. So, Amanda, I am an old man. And so when I got started, yes, I've really gotten to the point where I'm like, well, in my day, so totally not ironic. But in my day, and I don't think anybody's talked about this, but this is really vital because I want to go back to ego and I want to go back to vulnerability and having the ability to be open enough to share. In my day, the only people who wrote copy and content were paid professionals. It's the only people. You had to get a job, you had to be paid for it. So that's number one, compared to today where everybody is a content writer. Everybody in business. The second thing, and I think this is most vital, and this is what I want to check in on, because I think this is going to be really helpful to our audience when we talk about finding your business voice. The second thing I observed today compared to the days of yesteryear is when I wrote an ad, the ad went to the client marked it up, I made edits, it went back to the art director made edits and went back to the client, it got approved, and then it got shipped. I know this is really old school. It got shipped to the newspaper, and somebody on the floor took our ad and did whatever they needed to do, and it ran in the newspaper. I was never involved. I am so far removed from the experience of posting something. And so my ego didn't really have any issues because I wasn't there.
Right.
Compared to today. Okay, I am writing a LinkedIn post. I heard Amanda talk. She inspired me to cultivate and share an authentic post. And even though I don't have badass tattoos like her, I am a badass inside. Post this thing. And then the fragility of the ego when it doesn't get the engagement that we think it should get. Okay, we're on the therapist couch. How do we process the story of rejection?
Well, I think you have to look at why the hell you're writing then, and why are you actually posting? What is the origin there? What is the drive there? Are you posting to get recognition? Are you posting to, I mean, it's one thing if you're posting to get a specific outcome, like an ROI, or, you have to get a sale or something like that. But if you're posting just to share an idea, then one person who sees it, which you might never know who sees it because the algorithms and the tracking, you never know who's watching in the shadows. You might have changed that person's world and you don't even know. So what is your goal? If you're posting and you only get only two likes, you just changed two people's lives potentially. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. I think I learned that through social work. I was a social worker for 8 years, and, I'd be like, man, I only was able to get one girl to come into detox or to safe housing. Only one girl? That's an entire life. And so that really undid my attachment to a specific outcome. We set ourselves up for massive, massive disappointment when we attach ourselves to a very specific and detailed outcome. I think you can have anticipation of good things to happen, but you can't get attached to a specific outcome.
Well, you are a Zen master. You're talking about detachment. Namaste, Amanda. Yeah, because, if we're talking about creating our own content for our personal brand, or if we're talking about guiding people or doing content for our companies, there has to be a sense of vulnerability and spaciousness, in my opinion, inside of our hearts and souls when we're creating. Because Quincy Jones, the genius producer, writer, he's done everything. He always used to tell the artists, leave the door open so God could walk in the room. Because whether it was Michael Jackson or any of these amazing musicians that he would produce, he could tell when they were getting rigid and tight and they wanted it to be perfect. And that internal tension is not the elixir for creativity or inspiration. So kind of coming back through, I think there is this moment where you want to create the intention to just write, to share. And then that's always where the best ideas and words come from. And then after that, what I keep hearing you say is, well, what's your goal? Like, you put it on the world. Is your goal to go viral? Well, that's a shitty goal. You'll be disappointed. because even when you do go viral, the next time you won't go that viral again. And then it's this perpetuating stress. So if we're here to articulate and strengthen our business voice, we have to allow for space.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Obviously, I understand having specific ROIs attached to content creation. I mean, that's my whole business is we provide a specific ROIs for our clients. I think too, consistency needs to be mentioned in that conversation because people will post things. Why I actually had a client. We did one post. We'd been working with them for 1 week, and we did one post for them. And they said, "Why haven't I gotten $10,000 in sales? I should get $10,000 in sales." And I'm like, I don't know who the hell you've been talking to or reading, but that's just not how this works. There needs to be consistency. There needs to be trust built before people will trust you enough to listen to what you have to say and give you energy back in exchange for the energy you just gave them. And that takes a little bit to build because there's so many voices that they could be listening to, that they could be engaging with. Why should they engage with yours? Especially if you're one of those post and ghost people or you post, once a month randomly. So it was just kind of funny. That popped in my head as soon as you were talking about that.
Yeah. And if I can just share back, I think that's another thread of how we think about our audience here, listeners, because we're all coming from different places. So suppose you are one of those people who has a budget to hire out an amazing creator like Amanda. Well, your ego, your vulnerability, just because you're paying this other person to do it, that game is still in play,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just because you are detached from the actual creation process. No, 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 no. That energy, that spirit, that openness, it's just working in a different way.
Right.
And in fact, I would suggest, Amanda, and tell me if you agree or want to go to a different place. The best work that I've ever done for clients has always come from the best clients. The ones who are open,
Yep.
who will try things,
Mm-hmm.
who will push back, because it's not just listen to me, I know everything. It's a two-way street. And I think the business voice piece comes through that. It's like, let's really get clear. So let me transition to something that I read about you and your process, because I think this is really neat. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the things that you often do with your clients is you talk about visualization and meditation. What? What? You have no ego. You are
Oh
self-actualized.
my God, this is so ironic because I think anybody who interacts with me would think I'm the polar opposite of everything we're talking about. Yeah, we use it as part of our process because, like, even when we were first talking, if you don't know where you're going or where you're trying to lead people or who you're trying to talk to, then you should probably just keep your mouth shut. It's going
Mm,
to be really hard to have a message if you don't understand at least one of those parts. And so, what we do is us as a team, us as individuals, we practice a lot of visualization. I do a lot with the client when I'm onboarding them. And it's not this woo woo, we're burning sage and whatnot, but it's a situation to where I'm asking very specific questions in order to help them begin to visualize what they want and start leading them down the path of that visualization. So whether or not they know it or not, I'm leading them basically in a visualization practice so that we can figure out what they actually really want.
mm.
And once we can get that, and once we can put ourselves inside that idea and then the ideal client of theirs that has to do with that vision, then we're able to write directly to that ideal client, to their fears, to their desires, to their emotions, to their problems, which makes way more effective copy and content.
Wow. And then you wrap up by using Tibetan singing bowls, I'm sure, to
I left mine outside. I don't know where I mean, I got this, but that's not really a.
I either well, you can't see this because you're just listening, but I think Amanda just held up a hatchet. What was
Oh
that?
no, that's my everyday carry.
It's like, whoa.
That's a Ruger LC 380. That's what that is.
Okay, yeah. So note to self: do not upset Amanda. No, I'm kidding. Uh, very, very, very funny. Yeah, that's your brand.
Look, I have crystals as well sitting on my desk. Balance.
You are authentic. Okay, so I want to ask, when we're talking about finding our business voice, it seems to me, Amanda, that one of the great goals of life is to continue our own evolution.
Mhm.
That ideally, the Stephen today is far better than the Stephen of 5 years ago. And trust me, if you had met me back then, hopefully you would agree. But to bring this home, when do we need to check in on our business voice? When do we need to say, I've reached a new season of my life, and maybe my voice and what I share and how I share it should keep pace with who I am today?
I mean, I'm a very A type kind of individual, so I'm going to take that in a very logical way. I would say check in every single quarter.
Mm,
If you are a successful business, you will be growing rapidly each quarter. You'll be setting and hitting new goals each quarter. And there's an opportunity to make micro adjustments in that. So when you say check in with your voice, I feel like people might imagine a massive shift in a brand or a massive logo change or a massive something. No, 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 no. Micro adjustments.
mm.
That's how you get to the target. That's how you get to the bullseye. I just started doing archery. And so I have my compound bow, I have a range set up in my backyard, and the slightest adjustment will get me drastically further away or closer to that bullseye. If it's touching my cheek weird, if I'm pushing too much into it, if I'm not pulling all the way back, like the slightest thing will determine how close that arrow gets to that bullseye. The same as with your brand. So if you want to hit a new goal or to do something you've never done before, it's going to take a micro adjustment to get there. Every once in a while, you'll need to make a massive move and massive risks. I think people find massive moves way more romantic than small ones, but it's the small ones that seem to count the most.
I love how you phrased that. It was practical, it was reasonable, it was logical. And I concur. I don't believe in quantum leaps ever in anything. They don't really exist. It's usually a series of micro adjustments maintained and followed and noticed over a long period of time, ideally with a grateful heart. I think that's the secret part of it all.
Is that namaste coming out?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, as we move to close, I just want to say, Amanda, I want to honor you. I've known of you for quite some time through friendships and relationships that we have in common. And I must admit, being a professional writer as I mentioned earlier, I'm an old fogey at this point. And so I have a very, very high bar when it comes to people who say that they write for a living and are content creators and brand people. And boy, everything that I've seen come out from you on a personal level and the work you're doing with your clients is just simply outstanding. And I think today with this conversation, it just only reinforced what I could see from a distance, that you are definitely authentic and your brand voice is definitely true to who you are. And that's special and that's rare and that's very valuable.
Thank you. That you're gonna make me cry. That means a lot.
My pleasure. Thank you. I really appreciate it. A compelling business voice is distinct, clear, and persuasive. Isn't Amanda's voice distinct? She doesn't blend in with the crowd. She's clear too, isn't she? Clear in how she expresses herself and her ideas. And Amanda is persuasive. She wasn't trying to sell us anything, but she was very persuasive in sharing her beliefs on bettering your business voice online. Now, you might think Amanda's voice is compelling because she's a gifted writer and works at her craft, and that is certainly true. But that's not the entire reason why she has an effective business voice. Working at your craft is the business of doing. But remember, true success comes from the business of being. So what about Amanda's inner work can we learn from to improve our business voices? To answer that, we need to consult Dolly's rule, as in the Dolly Parton, the GOAT, greatest of all time. So before I tell you Dolly's rule, first, mad respect to Dolly Parton, songwriter, trailblazer, actress, business icon, theme park queen. Dolly has done it all, and she's done it with style. So let's get back to Dolly's rule. Dolly Parton once said, "Figure out who you are and do it on purpose." Dolly's rule helps to explain why Amanda has such a compelling business voice. Amanda knows who she is, and she does it on purpose. When you know who you are, you can do it on purpose. And regarding your business voice, doing it on purpose means being distinct, clear, and persuasive. So let's apply Dolly's rule to you. First stop, your online business voice. Figure out who you are online and do it on purpose. What parts of your personality and preferences do you want to bring to your online presence? What's your spin? What are you passionate about? P.S. You don't need to be a quote-unquote social media influencer to leave your mark online. Pro tip, leave thoughtful comments on people's posts. Engage in that conversation. I promise that you're going to do more for your business life and opportunities commenting on other people's posts and engaging in those conversations than just focusing solely on publishing your own content and hoping people like your own posts. Now, being distinct, clear, and persuasive online is one thing, but what about in real life, in meetings, client presentations, leading teams? Dolly's rule still holds true. Figure out who you are and do it on purpose. But in real life, the on purpose part of Dolly's wisdom is super important. Remember, compelling business voices have 3 elements: distinct, clear, and persuasive. Just think about Dolly Parton. Her voice is distinct, isn't it? You wouldn't confuse Dolly with anybody else. Dolly is clear in her communication. Dolly's message is always clear, right? And she's persuasive, isn't she? Now, I've never seen Dolly negotiate a business deal, but trust me, I would not want to negotiate against Dolly. Now, think of your business voice in real life. Of the 3 elements of a compelling business voice, what could you shine up and improve? Do you want to be seen and heard in business meetings? Then focus on being distinct. Is your message crisp and clean and succinct? If not, work on being clearer. Are you effective in getting what you want in business conversations, like inspiring people to work and act in a certain way? If not, work on being more persuasive. Remember Dolly's rule. Figure out who you are and do it on purpose. Make that next business meeting more distinct, clearer, or more persuasive, or all 3 if you're an overachiever. Your business voice is one of your most vital superpowers, so hone it. Start with Dolly's rule. Know who you are and do it on purpose. If you don't know who you are, then take some time to meet yourself. Figure out what makes you tick and what ticks you off. Figure out where you're going in your business life, the change you seek to make in the world or just simply in your own life. As Dolly says, figure out who you are and do it on purpose. Now it's your turn. In what setting could you hone your business voice to be more compelling, online or in real life? Pick one opportunity to improve your voice to be more distinct, clear, and persuasive, and practice. Getting better at anything, including your business voice, requires practice. Now, what about your audience? Now, most people will appreciate and respond well to you when your voice is distinct, clear, and persuasive. But of course, you're going to meet dragons and trolls along your business journey, right? These are the people that like to get in your way or get under your skin. And no matter how compelling your business voice is, these dragons and trolls, they aren't going to budge. So my advice, save your breath and move on. And remember to move on with grace and integrity. You don't have to stoop to their level. Don't forget what Dolly Parton also said. I never stepped on people on my way to the top, but I did have to step over people. The Business of Being is a production of Band of Misfits, your business life mentors. Come say hello at welcomemisfit.com. And while you're there, grab your copy of Misfits Microdoses, our email with drops of inspiration and insights to help you navigate your business life journey.
The show's executive producer is me, Sir Isaac Smith. We want this show to help as many people as possible on their business life journey. Would you help spread the word? Share this episode with a friend on social media, and please leave us a review. Every little bit helps.
Sir Isaac, if I may ask, just imagine you're having a conversation with the younger version of you, maybe slightly shorter beard, right? What's something that you would advise or something you would share with your younger self about starting a business?
Oh man, and this actually relates to a past episode that you've talked about. It's just do it. It's get in there and get your hands dirty. Even if what you start isn't where you end, it's a stepping stone to get there. And just sitting around talking about it. In college, all of my friends would talk about, wouldn't it be great to do this and that? And to this day, they're still just talking about it. No one's really going for it. And I got to the point where I just couldn't talk about it anymore. If I had spent a lot less time up front talking about it, though, I'd be a lot farther than where I am now. It's just do it.
Wow, great wisdom. And if I may ask as a quick follow-up, so when you just went ahead and did it, started the business, was it because your back was against the wall?
Podcast production is my first love, but it's not the only love that I've held in my business life. But when it came to this business specifically, yes, my back was against a wall. Metaphorically, I burned the boats. I quit the job that I had. I moved to a completely different zip code, brand new network, and it was, this is going to work or it's not going to work. And fortunately, things have been going very, very well. But my back was against a wall. And I had to make a choice, and I think I made the right one.
Sometimes we think that comfort is the best thing on earth, but the discomfort is actually where the growth occurs. So thanks for sharing that.
It is. Well, I actually, in that same vein, I had a question I wanted to ask you. In the podcast, success comes up from time to time, and everyone seems to use that word, but then when it comes down to what's actually achieved, everyone's success looks a little bit different. So I wanted to just ask, what are your metrics for measuring and defining success?
Metrics for measuring and defining success. So that's a great question. We should do a whole episode on this. But in the meantime, maybe I can do my concentrated version. So I think about business success, and I think about macro metrics and micro metrics. So macro, big picture, micro, those fine details, like the very specific measurements. And so maybe for purposes of answering your question, we'll stick with the macro for now. I think this is going to be really helpful. So I want you to imagine that you're holding a coin. It's a heavy, heavy coin. It's big. It's not a dime. It's not a nickel. It's not a quarter. It's like a $50. It's something substantial. In fact, if you were to put that coin in your pocket along with other coins, you would know just intuitively that coin is different. And that coin, that heavy, big, round coin, that's what I would call your success coin. And like all coins, your success coin has two sides. And yet, when we define success and when we measure success, we almost always, to a fault, only look at the one side. And that's the wealth side. That's the money side. That's the power side. That's the status side. Now, there's nothing wrong with that side of the coin. But if you don't turn the coin around and look at the other side, which is the other macro metric, that's when we get into trouble. That's when we get into burnout, to cynicism. Because that other side of the coin is your well-being metric. That is purpose. That is connection. That is relationships. That's health. That's wellness. That's the well-being side of success. And most of us, we want to spend that success coin any way we can for the wealth side. And there's nothing wrong with wealth. I love wealth. I love abundance. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But if we think about success only from that macro metric of wealth, then we feel incomplete. And we often try to spend the well-being side to get to the wealth side, but they're counterparts. It's just two sides of the same coin. So those are the two macro metrics that I am constantly fascinated to optimize to really make sure that they're in harmony. The wealth and well-being side of the success coin.
That really hits me. I had, when I started this business, a number in mind. And a lot of my approach to the business was around that number, just that side of the coin. Maybe I got some bad advice in the beginning because that's all that the people around me were focused on as well. And recently I had a mentor who told me very, very lovingly, but directly, you need to be taking care of yourself. There's something called being a workaholic. And it made a night and day difference, sitting down and just taking a bit of time for me. It's something that I'm learning. I'm still not comfortable with it yet. Is it possible to be uncomfortable taking care of yourself and still be successful? Or do you have to be comfortable?
Tell me about comfort. What do you mean by that?
When I am sitting down and taking an hour to work out or spend time with my wife, sometimes I'm still remembering all the other things that I have to do that day to get to that number. And so I'm not entirely comfortable, but I feel really good the rest of the day. Is that success? Or do I have to be comfortable when it comes to both sides of that coin to be successful?
Great question. So we live in the matrix, and some of us bust ourselves out of the matrix from time to time. The Business of Being podcast is trying to bust us out of the matrix to look more holistically at what success looks like. And so what happens is we say, well, gosh, I have a number I need to hit, right? A financial number. Maybe that number is not arbitrary. Maybe for you, Sir Isaac, there's a certain income level that helps you pay the rent, helps you get a new sound booth, helps you to expand the business, and that number is sacred, right? So there's nothing wrong with that number. But when we say, I need to hit the number at the expense of my well-being, now you can play that game for a period of time, and then you'll have the heart attack. Then you'll get the cancer diagnosis. Then your relationships will fall apart. So you have to keep being balanced and being in the groove. And day to day, just ask yourself, if I take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour to exercise, will I, in fact, be more vibrant and alive and present and engaged and creative in my work? Yes or no? Now the answer is yes. It's always yes. Just open up a science book if you need to know about the science of rest and movement, of well-being. And so if I take 14 minutes to meditate before a big client meeting, is that 14 minutes that I'm robbing from my wealth? Absolutely not. Because when I meditate, when I calm my mind, I show up better. So we're always in that balance. We're always looking for that harmony and that integration. Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you.
Oh, great question. Well, on that note, take us home, Sir Isaac.
For show notes, links, and behind-the-scenes shenanigans, visit welcomemisfit.com and click podcast. Until then, don't fit in, stand out.